Imagine walking into your local game store excited for a new release. You finally saved up enough money, including paying the tariff surcharge, only to find zero physical discs, just walls of Pokemon cards, Funko Pops, and download code. You buy a game today, pay full price plus import tax, and years later it vanishes from your library because servers shut down or the company delists it. Worse yet, even though a court has ruled that you should be refunded the tariff tax, that gets denied as well. This isn't some dystopian fiction. This is gaming in July 2026. There are three huge stories that have dropped recently that perfectly illustrate where the industry is headed. 1. GameStop CEO declaring physical games totally irrelevant, Sony announcing the death of physical discs starting in 2028, and Nintendo fighting customers in court over tariff refunds they don't want to share. Today, we're breaking down all three of those stories with facts, the fallout, and most importantly, what we as gamers can actually do about it. Now stay tuned all the way to the end for a special preview of my upcoming / in development game tentatively titled Shards of the Arcanum. It also says here to remind you to hit subscribe, but you guys already know that, so I'll skip that and let's get straight into the video. Let's start with the retailer that defines so many childhood, GameStop. Remember the midnight releases, massive lines, trading in old games for credit, and browsing walls of pre-owned titles? Those days are basically gone. In July 2026, Bloomberg interviewed CEO Ryan Cohen, Superstock's favorite CEO, and he said the quiet part out loud. Physical video game software is now totally irrelevant to their business. That's crazy. But when you look at their Q1 2026 earnings, the numbers back him up. The company had its most profitable quarter in a while, but it wasn't because of games. Collectibles, cards, toys, apparels hit $349 million, 41.8% of revenue, up a massive 65% year over year. Those are huge numbers, huge games, and a complete and total shift in what GameStop even does as a company. Hardware and accessories, that's around 40%, and software, both physical and digital, fell to just $153 million, or roughly 18%. However, Cohen claims it's now under 12%. That is wild. GameStop is no longer primarily a video game store. It's a pop culture collectibles shop that keep a few games in the back. They're chasing the high margin trading cards like Pokemon Power Packs and even pushing for an eBay acquisition to go all in on secondary market. Physical game margins are just tiny for retailers. Collectibles are where the real money is. For fans who loved trading used games or browsing physical shelves, this shift hurts. If GameStop's pivot felt like a gut punch, Sony delivered the knockout blow. In a widely publicized and even more loudly condemned move, on July 2026, PlayStation announced that starting January 2028, they will stop producing physical game discs for all new PlayStation releases, first and third party alike. As I'm sure you've heard, people were unhappy with this change. Sony directly stated new games are going to be digital only and implicitly suggested the PS6, likely arriving in 2028 as well, will also not have a disk drive, at least on the base model. The reason is that digital already makes up 80 to 85% of their sales. They call it adapting to consumer preferences. Critics call it eliminating competition from used games and maximizing control plus profits. Like I said, the response has been overwhelmingly negative from gamers, retailers, and some industry figures, focusing on a loss of true ownership, resale, trading, game preservation, secondhand markets, price concerns, now that there's no competition from physical retail, and risks of digital revocation, as Sony recently removed hundreds of purchased movies from people's library. As reported by digitalfoundry.net, the Don't Kill the Disc petition launched shortly after the announcement by Jade Pierce, CEO of Canadian retailer PNP Games. It quickly gained traction, hitting 100,000 signatures in days, then 150 to 170,000, and now it's over 220,000 and reportedly higher. It was at 286,000 mentioned in one update. It urges Sony to keep physical options and highlights consumer rights, industry impacts on retailers, and preservation issues. Eurogamer.net, they reported about social media and review bombing. PlayStation's X account went quiet for nearly a week after the announcement. When it returned, posts were heavily ratioed with complaints. YouTube trailers and promotions have been flooded with negative comments and dislikes focused on the disc decision rather than the content. Examples include trailers for Marvel's Wolverine, Dench Attack, Mortal Shell 2, Doom DLC, indie games, even Spider-Man related content wasn't safe. The Resident Evil movie trailer, basically anything Sony has touched. IGN.com reported that industry figure reactions from Hideo Kojima called it really sad and expressed fears about content removal. Former devs noted Sony issued strict internal social media guidelines due to the expected PR hit. Trevor Noah commented on affordability and sharing via physical media, and there's been a broader dismay from retailers and preservation advocates. NME.com reported that Sony's actions told developers and publishers that reorders for pre-2028 disc games would still be possible and offered code-based retail options for new games, no reversal. The company has largely stayed silent publicly on the backlash while continuing promotion. One notably tone-deaf post promoted a vinyl turntable with phrasing about the way it was meant to be heard. Sony's stock rose post-announcement, seen as positive by investors for margins. EU regulators stated they couldn't intervene due to commercial freedoms. Community notes on Sony's posts highlighted digital licenses not equaling ownership, and there have been calls for boycotts of PS5 games and shifts to other platforms like PC, Xbox, and Switch 2. As of late July 2026, there is zero indication Sony plans to reverse course. The backlash continues but hasn't forced a change. The petitions remain active and review bombing / social pressure persists on new content. Physical media for pre-2028 games will continue for some time, but the shift signals a broader industry trend towards digital. For the latest, check the change.org petition in the description or gaming news sites. And things just keep getting worse. Meanwhile, Nintendo is in a messy court fight that feels especially tone deaf. In 2025, amid US tariffs, they raised Switch prices significantly. $30 on the Lite, $40 on the Standard, and $50 on the OLED, plus accessory hikes. Then, in February 2026, the Supreme Court ruled those tariffs illegal. Companies could seek refunds from a massive $166 billion pool. Nintendo sued the government for their share plus interest. Customers who paid the higher prices filed a class action lawsuit arguing Nintendo got paid twice and should pass refunds along. On July 21st, Nintendo lawyers fired back with a motion to dismiss. Those who bought Nintendo's products received exactly what they bargained and paid for. Plaintiffs are not entitled to a rebate simply because of intervening legal developments related to tariffs. In short, you paid the listed price, tough luck. They claim they absorbed some costs, but many fans see it as straight up double dipping. All this is crazy to me. Nintendo charged you higher prices to cover the tariff. Then when the tariff was declared illegal, Nintendo sued the government to get that money back for themselves. So they did get paid twice for the exact same console. They kept your inflated purchase price and now they're collecting a fat government rebate on top of it. I think everyone is right to be furious, and the lawsuit argues that if Nintendo gets a tariff refund from the government, that the money morally and legally belongs to the consumers who paid those inflated prices in the first place. Nintendo further argued that no law forces a company to retroactively lower prices on completed sales and that they absorb some cost variations themselves. While legally Nintendo's lawyers are making a standard corporate defense, ethically it feels like a massive slap in the face to millions of loyal fans. So let's look at the bigger picture here. Connect the dots across all three of those stories. GameStop is abandoning physical games because software doesn't yield high enough profits compared to collectibles. Sony is ending disc manufacturing to force everyone into a digital-only ecosystem where they control 100% of the prices. And Nintendo is fighting in court to keep their government refunds for illegal tariffs while refusing to give a single cent back to the fan. This isn't three random corporate stories. This is the state of modern gaming in 2026. We are witnessing the final execution notion of physical media and consumer ownership. When everything is digital, you don't actually own your games. You own a temporarily revocable license to access a file on a remote server. When a publisher decides to delist a game due to expired music licenses, you lose it. When a console maker decides to shut down legacy servers, your digital library becomes a digital graveyard. And without a secondary market of used physical discs, publishers have zero incentive to ever permanently or temporarily lower digital prices. It sounds depressing, and it is. But the fight isn't completely over yet. If you want to protect your right to own what you pay for, here's what you can actually do right now. Support physical indie publishers. Companies like Limited Run Games, Super Rare Game, and independent developers are still dedicated to putting full, unpatched games on real physical cartridges and discs. Support them whenever possible. Vote with your wallet. Stop pre-ordering digital-only $70 or $80 games. If a publisher refuses to give you a physical options or fair pricing, wait for deep sales or buy a DRM-free platform like GOG on PC, where you can download offline installers that can never be taken away from you. And third, support game preservation and legislation. Keep an eye on the EU, where lawmakers are currently pushing for new consumer protection laws that are going to force digital storefronts to guarantee long-term game preservation and require clear labeling that digital purchases are merely licenses, not permanent ownership. Fourth, sign the petition and make noise. The Don't Kill the Disc petition has over 300 signatures, I just checked. Will it change Sony's mind overnight? Maybe not. But public outrage and bad publicity are the only language these mega corporations understand. Gaming isn't dying, but the era where you actually own the games you paid hard-earned money for is severely under attack. If we don't fight back for physical media and consumer rights today, tomorrow we won't own anything at all. Now, rather than leave on that downer of a note, there are two more things that I want to talk about. The first one is Mario Kart Wii native PC port via static recompilation. This is a little bit of a hot topic, so to speak, in coding. It's wrapped in the third rail of software development world, vibe coding. A developer named Petitions recently revealed Mario Kart Wii Compiled, a native Windows executable created for Mario Kart Wii code. This project represents the first static recompilation of a full Nintendo Wii title. Traditional emulation interprets console instructions on the fly, consuming heavy processing bandwidth and introducing input latency. Static recompilation, on the other hand, translates binary machine code directly into modern PC instructions before execution, resulting in an application that runs natively without emulator overhead, delivering locked performance, instant controller responsiveness, and simple scaling to 4K resolutions with unlocked frame rate. In certain cases, actually on the Mario Kart Wii case, it is locked to 30 frames per second due to how the game is coded. But in some cases, you can get better resolutions and unlocked frame rate rates, just not with Mario Kart. This project launches in a public beta this August with built-in support for Retro Rewind, a major community mod containing over 200 custom and classic tracks. The port runs clean without original game assets included. Users must supply their own legally dumped game ISO files to build the native executable. This approach keeps the developer safe from direct copyright enforcement, as the software distribution contains zero protected artwork, audio, or proprietary assets. So now the bad news. Like I said, releasing an AI-generated port of a game whose online netcode has multiple RCEs discovered is not only incredibly irresponsible, but can be extremely dangerous. The moment a new remote code execution is found, hackers won't be compromising the Wii's or Dolphin instances. They'll be compromising people's entire PC because it's not in an emulation layer anymore. So vibe coding projects can be hit or miss. I am personally reserving my judgment until August, but it's decently something to check out. If you don't want to wait until August, you can check out the developer's X profile, and they have links to the Dolphin version, the emulated version, the Team Wheel Wizard Retro Rewind launcher. Try saying that 5 times fast. Links to the Discord are also in the description for this video. And the next thing that we're going to talk about is converting Steam libraries into physical SATA cartridges. PC builder Gibral created a physical cartridge system for digital PC games using standard 2.5-inch SATA solid-state drives. By housing cheap 128 gig SSDs inside custom designed shells, the creator builds tangible cartridges for individual Steam games. It's super super cool. Inserting an SSD cartridge into the front panel SATA hot swap dock triggers background Linux system rules. A custom UDEV script detects the incoming drive partition, mounts the file system, and opens Steam, then executes the game launcher instantly. Games remain off the main system OS drive, saving local storage while restoring the tactile feel of a retro gaming console. The setup relies on automated UDEV rules and systemd service triggers on Linux environments. Obviously, not every Linux uses systemd, but a lot of them do. Below, in the description, I'll have a link to my blog, which has the actual configuration files and what is required to build an automated SSD launcher system. The simple setup bridges retro physical media handling with modern digital game libraries and is a step in the right direction for restoring physical gaming. Alright, if you're still listening to this, thank you so much for sticking with it. I really appreciate you. This video was, I think, a pretty good summary of some of the major topics in gaming this month. Now, I promised that I would show off what I've been working on. This is a Godot game I've been trying to get up and running, which as of right now is titled Shards of the Arcanum, but that will likely change. It's a blobber-style dungeon crawler, so for anyone old, you might know about this. There was this thing called DOS back in the day. This is a little bit before even my time, where you played these old pixel art RPGs. You moved your character north, south, east, west in a sort of grid layout. In learning about them, I fell in love with the art style and the simplicity of them, and it really made me think, oh hey, I think I might be able to make that. A major part of this kind of game is the menu system and being able to adjust your equipment, customize your characters, and so I have spent a fair bit of the development time on that, trying to nail the menu system. Right now, it's a 6-party setup, so you can have up to 6 members, and each member has a custom race and custom class. Think human fighter or elf mage, only in this world everyone is a kind of cat. I'm leaning heavily on the fantasy archetypes of like D&D and the old DOS Wizardry series that initially inspired the game. One of the most annoying things about that type of game in an RPG is the slow combat system. In Wizardry, for instance, each round you had to click 6 different commands, then wait for all 6 characters to act, then the enemies would act, and then finally it would be back to you to go again. Super slow and super painful. My attempt to improve on that has been to add an active battle gauges, just like more modern RPGs have, where once it's full, it's that character's turn. I'm also implementing an auto button, a la raid, so your characters will just continue to do whatever they did last time until you stop it. With some triggers, like any light magic spell can be put on a trigger. If your health falls below a set percent, they'll automatically cast heal, that kind of stuff. As far as the fighting itself goes, you can see here I've got 2 zombies getting their dead faces beat in. Huge shout out to Kenny.nl for hooking me up with the assets and animations for the zombies. Now here's where you come in. If you have ever wanted to help build a game that's still early in development, all of the code for this is on my GitHub profile and can be contributed to, as well as I'm trying to get enough people interested to maybe do a kind of stream where the chat contributes to the live development as it happens. Once the menus are set up, the majority of the development is going to be designing the levels and various enemies, so coming up with ideas for dungeon layouts and what type of monsters should live in there would be fun, I think, to have everyone join in. Anyways, leave a comment or message me if you would be interested in that. And with all of these topics and this preview now done, that's going to be the end of this video. Links to everything I talked about are in the description, and there's also a much longer article about all of this on my blog that goes way more in depth, so check that out if you want more, and please like me, I crave your validation. Until next time, peace.